This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This week's video is going to be an overview of this World Products Man of War block that we will be using for our 470 cubic inch Clevor build. And this is a beefy block here. I just wanted to show you some of the highlights of it. It is a cast iron block with splayed billet steel main caps. Got studs on the middle, and it is bolted on the outside of all 5 caps. The caps are doweled, which keeps them located that way, and these hardened washers for the stud nuts also have a little locator on those, so the cap is located at the top and the bottom. You're probably already noticing these reliefs in the bottoms of the cylinders, and this is done from World Products, and they clearance this for up to a 4 1/4 stroke, which is convenient because we are using a 4 1/4 stroke. So I'll be mocking the crank up here in a few minutes, and with a rod cap, and just making sure that these reliefs are in the right spot. Normally what I have to do is grind considerably on the bottoms of the cylinder skirts for the 4 1/4 stroke, and I also have to grind a lot on the oil pump boss, and that's already done. So kudos to World Products. Just a very well thought out block. I think this is the most recent revision. They didn't used to come with billet steel main caps. They had nodular caps. So that's a nice change. I have no clue what this block would support as far as horsepower wise. My guess is probably 2,000, 2,500, something like that. What's nice is, you know, we do a lot of work to oil passages and things like that, and gasket match to our oil pumps, and this is a Melling Select oil pump that I'll be using from Precision Oil Pumps. And as you can see, it's as close to gasket matched as you possibly can get. Very nice stuff. Don't really have to touch anything except break that edge, and I'll hit that with a cartridge roll, make that nice and smooth. And here's another spot where it usually gets hairy on these long stroke Windsors. The pan rail usually needs to be clearanced, and that's already done for us. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is get the caps off of it and flip it over, and we'll go over some of the other features of this block. All right, so we got it right side up. And as you'll notice right off the bat, this is a very different looking Windsor block. This is a 9/500 deck Windsor based block, and they do a lot of different things differently as opposed to a factory block. First thing you'll notice is the extra beef at the top and the bottom for head bolt holes. There are some heads that will take advantage of that. I think some of the Profiler brand heads will use those. Lifter valley is totally different, and it's extremely beefy. It is drilled for the lifter hold down tray if you decide to use that. But one thing you'll notice, it does not have the crossover in the rear of the block for the lifter galleries. So that's been omitted from there. We've got different screw-in plug fittings for the galleries at the ends of them. They did change the design for the block. You won't see any clean out right here for the lifter gallery. You know, normally you see something here and something here with a plug on it, but the lifter gallery is deadheaded pretty much right there. It's no big deal. You can still clean from the rear, and you'll get a clean out in that lifter bore. So this is your main oil pressure feed that you're normally used to seeing. If you follow the oil path, it goes up. This is your main oil gallery here. And then there's a clean out to the top. And if you follow this all the way back to the back, it dead ends here. There's an offshoot. It's hard to see with the engine stand, but it comes up and then comes right through here. So these two passages here intersect your lifter galleries. This is, you can use, if you're using a dry sump pump, you can scavenge from this area here or from this area, depending on, you know, your cylinder head situation. And it dead ends here, so you can pull vacuum from your lifter gallery. Lifter valley, how's that? So you can pull vacuum from here and also scavenge your oil from here. Pretty stout piece. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna lay the crank in the block and use a rod cap and just check our clearances on the cylinder walls and around the oil pump boss and things like that. This block has been align honed, but the rest of the machining processes have not been done yet. I wanted to go ahead and do some mocking up and checking before we do that. So the cylinders are not honed, the decks have not been surfaced. We just have the mains touched so far. No cam bearings yet. Basically just a raw block. And we're gonna do some machining checks. So I've got some mock-up bearings. I've got the rear bearing in, the thrust bearing to keep the crank from walking back and forth. And I've got the front bearing in. First thing I noticed is this is your feed for your cam bearing. This is gonna be your feed for the main bearing. I'm gonna have to think about what I'm gonna do here because I don't like the looks of that. I'll probably walk the hole back in the block a little bit. If you notice, I've got a relief on the others, and I think it needs to be relieved right here too. Don't really care for that, so we'll look into that later and probably adjust that a little bit. All right, so I got our mock-up bearings installed and got the crank laid in here. The crank is dirty, everything's dirty. Doesn't matter at this point because it's just mock-up. I don't care if the bearings get scratched or not. But this is a Scat 4340 4¼ stroke crank. First thing that I want to do is just roll the crank over and make sure all the counterweights clear, everything. You can't really tell on camera just because of the view, but everything does clear. And I walk through and I roll the crank over and look at all of the cylinder skirts and even the bottoms down here and make sure that everything clears. This is a very large stroke for a Windsor. This is a 9/500 block, but it's a 4¼ stroke, and things start to get hairy at this point. So we've got good clearance everywhere, and at this point I'm going to throw a rod cap on it with a bolt and a bearing and just roll over and make sure that we got clearance between all the bottoms of the cylinders, and everything clears. This is, I forgot to mention, this is not a typical Windsor main. Most of your aftermarket cranks for the small block Ford in the tall deck version will be a Cleveland main. That's what this is, a 2750. So it doesn't use the 3-inch Windsor main, and it doesn't use the 2¼ 302 main. It uses the Cleveland main. But so that's step 1, and we'll go on to step 2. All right, so we're using Molnar rods here, and I have a cap and a bearing, mock-up bearing, and the bolts. And got the chamfer going to the correct side. So what I like to do is just roll the engine around, and probably won't be able to do it on camera unless I get my harness to hold my camera. But when you roll the crank around, you can see, you know, the bolt in relation to the cylinder skirt. And over the years, I've learned that if I can do it this way and clear, then I won't have any problems. So, you know, just go around and check each location and make sure that the clearance is right, and especially around where the oil pump bolt's on. So I'm used to working with dart blocks, and the dart cylinder skirts do not come down this far, which poses a little bit of a problem for me right now. I went ahead and put the whole rod in here just so I could get an idea of what's going on, because, you know, if you position the little end of the rod about where the pin boss would be on the piston, it makes all the difference in the world. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is probably waiting to do the rest of this until the cylinders are bored and honed, and I can get a mock-up piston in there and check clearances that way. The skirts are just stupid deep right here, and they come down really far. So the saving grace is the Molnar rods are really, really small as far as cross section on the beam and the big end and everything. So I shouldn't have any problems. But that's why you mock stuff up, especially on combinations that, you know, there's not a lot of information and data out there about, and, you know, not a lot of people put 4 1/4 stroke crankshafts in Windsor blocks. I do quite a bit, but it's normally on a Dart cast iron block or a Dart aluminum block, and they're made totally different. So at this point in time, I think we're going to be good, but I'm going to check it again once the block is fully machined and I can get a piston in there and just check everything out there. So I'm going to pop the crank out of it now and check some bearing clearances just to get some idea of where we are. I'll probably check number 1 and see where we are with, I don't think I have any coated, I might have some coated bearings on the shelf, but I want to check it and see where we are on bearing clearance so I know what bearing to use when it comes time for checking main bearing clearances and everything. Rod bearing clearance has already been checked, and we got that far at least. But that's where we are, and I'll take a cartridge roll and clean up some of these sharp edges at the top and the bottom, and we'll be ready to go on to the next machining process. All right, so we got our front main cap torqued with our Clevor coated bearings in there, and I've already mic'd my crank journal. And this is why we do mock-ups, because we've only got a little over 1.5 thou of clearance. Walk over to the other side. So at least the journal's straight and everything. We're at 10017. Obviously that's not going to cut it. So with a coated bearing, you can usually run just a little bit tighter than normal, but I'm not comfortable with 0017. So I'm going to snag a set of X bearings, and hopefully that will put me around the 2730 range, which is where I want to be. This is going to be a higher horsepower motor. So with the higher horsepower stuff, we usually add a little bit of clearance just because, you know, crankshafts flex and things move around. So you want a little bit more bearing clearance than normal. But that's why we check, and unfortunately I don't have a set of coated Cleveland X bearings on the shelf, so I'll have to get those coming. But not much more I can do so far. I'm just hopping around from build to build. Parts supply is horrible right now thanks to COVID, and you know, everybody's slow, and I'm just swamped and booked up and can't get parts and trying to get crankshafts, you know, modified and everything. So I'm just hopping around from engine to engine. It looks like I want to have to hop from this one to another one. And I knew that because the block's not fully machined, but I need to get some more bearings in here. But I think we're an excellent foundation so far for this build. If you remember, we're going to be using CHI ported 3V heads, and it will get a sheet metal intake with a couple of quick fuel carburetors on top. This thing's going to make some horsepower, and we've got an excellent foundation for the build so far. Between the scat crank and the Molnar rods and this beefcake of a block. So just wanted to do some mock-up work and show you, you know, the potential issues with the longer stroke cranks, and also show off these man of war blocks. I think these are excellent pieces in comparison to the darts. The Dart SHP is what I usually use, and those cost about $2,200. I think this block was almost $3,000, and you know, the difference in price isn't that much. The block is made for more beef than the SHP, and I'm not trying to knock Dart, because they have, you know, other they have the Sportsman block and Iron Eagle block, and those blocks will certainly, you know, handle the horsepower. But as of right now, they have a 14-week lead time, and you know, we have to get stuff moving. And so I have this man of war block, and we're going to use it, and it's going to rock. So just wanted to showcase that block and talk some about the build, and you know, what we have to do on some of the longer stroke stuff. Let me lay my bore mic down and show you this. This is the oil pump I'm going to be using. It's a Precision Oil Pumps blueprinted pump, and I had him change the springs and everything in it for me. All the bolts have been wired, safety wired, and it's got a nice screw-in plug for the relief spring that you can change. Moly coated inside. So that'll be the oil pump that we use. It's also got the, you know, the shaft support in the cover, which is really nice. All right, guys, that'll be about it for this video, and I appreciate you watching. And I do a lot of FEs, but it's kind of nice sometimes to switch over to something a little bit different. I love my FEs, but you know, sometimes you can have too much of a good thing, and it's nice to see something else for a change. But all right, y'all have a good weekend, and thanks for watching. And have a good long Memorial Day weekend, and I hope you have a good vacation. All right, thanks. All right, just as a follow-up, I went ahead and modified this hole because I didn't like it. The bearing covered up the majority of that feed hole, and this huge hole is just a byproduct of a clean out for this major oil intersection that goes from here up to the main feed. So they want to make sure that you can get a, you know, a pretty big brush in there to clean that out. But now when the bearing goes in, you know, I have plenty of volume for this front bearing and for the cam bearing too. So I just wanted to show that, and I took just a die grinder and keyholed it, and then took a cartridge roll and took all the sharp edges out of it, and also cartridge rolled the entrance to the oil pump feed, and also through here, just to blend that in a little bit. All right, now you all have a good Memorial Day weekend. See ya.